compensate because with my YouTube channel, the most I've made in 28 days is like $175. I think since I've started my channel, and I can pull this up, it's
Yeah.
less than since I started being monetized, which would have been late January of this year. I want to say I've made less than $500, and I actually haven't even received any of it yet.
So, hey everyone, I have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with the one and only Rice of the Rice Crypto YouTube channel. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well, man. It's going well. Appreciate you inviting me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, no problem. So, what we first sort of became acquainted via the interwebs, most likely on Twitter, and just talking about random things. And I got on your show to talk about my usual shtick, and sort of been in the periphery for a while, running a lot of the same circles, and you're kind of one of the generation of like a newer generation of crypto YouTubers, which is something that I don't know if I don't quite consider myself as because I kind of neglect my YouTube channel, but I it's one of those things where crypto YouTubers got a really bad reputation in my opinion in the past because there's just a lot of people who just start posting like mad gains here's my like leverage trading link and like just and it turns out that a lot of people got their primary crypto news from YouTubers. And a lot of these people have no training, no ethics, no scruples, no nothing. And but more importantly, the whole idea was let's build a huge YouTube channel and then let's use that let's run off of Google ads there and
Mhm.
then spam referral links and stuff. And if you're on other channels, it's only to like talk about them on a YouTube video, but it's only YouTube. And then at some point, you're going to get some strikes against your channel. You're going to cry about it on Twitter and stuff, and you're going to give LBRY a boost in popularity that week. And so that's kind of the way it works. But you're kind of one of these new people who's kind of newer to the game, and I've seen you lean into alternative platforms like LBRY
Mhm.
and in ways that most people don't. I mean, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm kind of the like only LBRY kind of, and YouTube just as an afterthought, just in case someone complains about going to LBRY.
Right.
But so first off, would you call yourself a YouTuber primarily, or would you call yourself just a content creator, a video creator? How would you describe what you do, and then tell me what you actually do, like the full extent of it?
Okay, cool. So yeah, now I would identify as a content creator, journalist, researcher,
Hmm.
kind of how you identify in that aspect.
Yeah.
I did start off with a YouTube channel. So I was specifically a YouTuber. And then
Hmm.
as I started learning about these decentralized or more content freedom platforms, video sharing platforms, I started adding my content. I was an early user to Steam and Steam It back
Hmm.
in early 2017. Now, I'm not really necessarily new. I just kind of have been flying under the radar. I started my channel in January of 2018. It was May of 2019 that I really got into it full time, where I was like putting out at least 4 videos a week and being very consistent for now over a year. But as far as like what happened with me, and we talked a little bit about this, and I've talked about it
Hmm.
in my videos. And you can find me on YouTube and LBRY at Rice Crypto, 2 words. But what happened was for me personally, even though I was on Steemit and using DTube and also BitTubers, there were some issues with YouTube that had happened in late December of last year, the crypto YouTube purge, where a bunch of channels had videos removed, strikes. Some of the channels got removed, like completely removed. And ultimately, that was all fixed with no explanation, of course.
Of
But what
course.
ended up happening for me was I realized that having my videos on DTube, the way I was using it, my videos weren't staying on the blockchain on
Hmm.
DTube or Steemit or anything like that. When it was taken off of YouTube, it was taken off of DTube as well. So I started talking about this on Twitter. Started talking to Tom from LBRY, and he started telling me that once it's transferred over, it's on the LBRY blockchain. No issues, no worries. So like Once it's all transferred over, if YouTube decides they don't like you and they want to get rid of your channel, it's there. So
Mhm.
then about January of this year, I took that leap and made LBRY my equivalent,
Mhm.
because I am trying to use YouTube, because YouTube is the largest, second largest search engine. It's
Mhm.
if you
Absolutely.
want to gain, if you want to have impact with your voice, you're going to have to use all the tools that you can. And in the sense of YouTube, use the tools of the system against itself. So in the beginning of my videos, I'm always telling people, check out my Patreon channel where I post up exclusive content, and check out my LBRY channel where I post up extra videos. Every
Mhm.
once in a while, I'll say it's my official backup channel.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm letting people know that with the censorship and shadow banning that's going on, that's getting worse, that
Yeah.
it is more than likely, it's just when is my channel going to be deleted by YouTube. And
Mhm.
so I've been setting the precedence to let people know where they can find me other than YouTube. And then because of all that, I started talking about launching my audio podcast, which I
Mhm.
finally, after a lot of talk and procrastinating, finally did that. And it launched just yesterday, actually, my very first official episode for the exclusive audio podcast.
So where's
And
that hosted on?
it's hosted on Anchor, and
Mhm.
but which means it's pretty much on all the major
Yeah.
podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and but Anchor is really, it's really convenient, really easy. You can upload tracks. I'm working with a producer that's going to be
Mhm.
helping me out with it, because we're going to talk a little bit about what we do and
Yeah, the
what comes
journey.
into it. With the audio podcast, I just get to record files like
Mhm.
MP3s, audio files, and just give them to my producer and tell him where they're supposed to be, and then he puts the
Mhm.
collage together. And it's nice to have that being done, and it just spreads my voice out even further, so
Mhm.
that if YouTube wants to delete my channel, it's just like, well, go ahead, because now I've got myself all over the interwebs.
Yeah.
And as a content creator, I started out, um, you mentioned a crypto content
Mhm.
creators or crypto YouTubers.
Yes.
I definitely would have started out in that vein.
Mhm.
I talked about cryptocurrency, economics, and I also talked and try to teach people and cover voluntarist and anarchist related topics, especially now with all the Antifa stuff going on. And we
Oh
really need to
yeah.
educate people about what anarchy really is.
Mhm.
And I know you do a good job of that. But with all that being said, just a couple months ago, um, I came to the realization that I was like feeling very undervalued in the cryptocurrency community.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Not to come at this from an egotistical point of view, or me, but the people that I've interviewed this year,
Mhm.
the resume is just on its own stands very well.
Yeah.
I mean, John McAfee several times, Roger Beer several times, Andreas Antonopoulos, Max Kaiser, Anthony
Mhm.
Pompliano. Just had on G. Edward Griffin yesterday, did interview number 7 with John McAfee yesterday as well. It's crazy. It's such a blessing, and that's just a few of the people that I've interviewed. But I
Mhm.
struggle to get views. I struggle
Mhm.
to build subscribers, and I was hitting right over 3,000 subscribers about 3.5 months ago,
Mhm.
and then I started branching out my content and restructuring my channel. So when you mentioned earlier, how should I introduce you? The
Yeah.
Rice Crypto YouTube channel is a brand. And
Yeah.
under the channel, I have 3 shows. And I have the Rice Crypto Show, which covers blockchain, crypto, and technology. And then I have the Rice Report, which covers
Mhm.
economics and politics. And then I have Stranger Than Fiction. This is my branch out where I'm
Mhm.
covering conspiracy theory, unproven things. I mean, as you realize,
All
there's
all
so
the
many things.
demonetization ones.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but what it's done is it's helped me to build my audience and get out of
Mhm.
this echo chamber. I've doubled my numbers.
Mhm.
I'm touching on 6K subscribers right now.
Yeah.
You know, talking about QAnon and Nasera, Jacera, and hidden history and just a variety of subjects, but
Mhm.
not coming at this from like with, especially with the QAnon stuff, that I'm vouching and saying that this is a legit thing.
Yeah.
But I think that people can have really good conversations about it, and the dialogue that comes out of it,
Mhm.
it takes you down so many different tangents that it's just kind of like just an introduction to freedom, basically.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I noticed is it's extremely hard to find what's successful. Like right to just know what's successful ahead of time. To just be like, this is gonna work. And what you can do is you can copy other people who've been successful. But I have a feeling that that's kind of what maybe you might have been doing in the early days. I won't say copying like a disrespectful way, but like, well, it's just I'm a crypto channel. I'm going to interview the big crypto names, and then it'll work. And it's like it's not a formula for success necessarily,
Right.
and every time there's a formula for success, the formula starts to break down because you start to be like, well, this is what everyone wants to hear. This is what people do. And that's like, it's kind of a cliche to like for every content creator and podcaster and things like that, I believe gives like a big hat tip to Joe Rogan, but I don't think they understand what they're saying. Like, I don't think they get what he's doing. They just think, man, he just does a podcast and it's great. And I want to do a podcast and have it be great. But this guy broke all the rules and became number one by being
A
everything that
rebel.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everyone who tries, and a lot of people try to copy him because they think he found a formula. He did not find the formula.
No, he
The
just bucked
formula
the
he did
system, right?
yeah, he was true to himself. He was doing his best self, his most authentic, best work. And that just resonated with people because he's a really, like, he's that guy who can do that. And everyone else has to do what he did, but doesn't look like what he did. They have to do something that looks like what's them. They have to be
Yeah.
uniquely. And that's the terrifying thing is most people that don't know who they are, most people who do know who they are really don't like who they are. And so they're just trying to be someone else and hope it works. Cause like, oh, they like that person. I'm going to be like that. And then they're
This has been so
yeah.
liberating for me, dude. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was taking a leap of faith, trying to, say, like, I don't want to be limited to just crypto and economics.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for me, it all kind of fits under a big umbrella, anyways. And there's
Yeah.
people that like all of it, and there's some people that like some specific things. But dude, it's been so freeing. And when you said something about being true to yourself, if you
Mm-hmm.
check out, if anybody wants to go through and look at like my live streams
Yeah.
that I've been doing and stuff like that with these roundtable conversations with friends, I'm really starting to come a lot more out of my shell and not worry about this camera that's in front of me
Mm-hmm.
and focus on that. And I'm really right now kind of getting back how I felt when I first got involved in cryptocurrency, which is the smell of revolution, the
Yeah. The
smell of change.
excitement.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm going down that road. And that's why I don't put out videos that are like
Mm-hmm.
the shill videos. Now I do, to try to make a living off this full time. I do
Mm-hmm.
some paid content. I'll let people know these are sponsored videos, but I make sure that if I do something like that, that it is a project that I would have covered regardless,
Yeah.
that I'm not getting paid to just shill something for the sake of shilling it. Cause I've turned down a lot of money, but I do accept a little bit here and there to kind of compensate, because with my YouTube channel, the most I've made in 28 days is like $175. I think since I've started my channel, and I can pull this up, it's
Yeah.
less than, since I started being monetized, which would have been late January of this year. I want to say I've made less than $500, and I actually haven't even received any of it yet.
Yeah.
I'm working on that, but it's ridiculous, dude. So I got
You know what's funny?
sponsors.
I still get emails like every couple months from Google AdSense telling me your payments on hold. You have $100, but we need to, all this stuff from like years ago because I haven't had a bank account in almost about 4 years now, actually, a little over 4 years.
This hold
Yeah.
on, let me. $411.56 is how much I've made this entire time of being able to monetize. So if anybody thinks you make money on YouTube, you don't. Now I do
Yeah.
have two sponsors
Mm-hmm.
that are normal monthly sponsors. I play
Mm-hmm.
little videos at the beginning of my video, and that's Monarch, the
Mm-hmm.
cryptocurrency wallet, and Presearch, the decentralized
Yeah.
search.
And I
I mean,
do
they're
use
both
Presearch every single day. I've not used Monarch yet. I'm kind of like I'm very limited in the wallets I use, but Presearch is definitely something that I'm always leveraging, and I've met a bunch of
great
those
companies. So I mean, it's
good
not like,
people.
and they're supportive of me and supportive of
Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing, and it helps me out. So I mean, like all together, I would say I make on average probably under $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, now I know that as I grow, there's going to be the potentiality that I could make more, but that's not what I'm just trying to be able to pay my bills.
Yeah. Just
And
keep
I'm
the
trying to
lights on.
stack my sats and stuff like that. I'm trying to do some swing trading and things like that to be able to hold on for my future. But as
Hmm.
far as the present, the here and now, I'm on a mission, and as long as I can pay my bills, I'm good to go.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of successful people, and when you study successful people, a lot of that there's a certain kind that are just entrepreneur types who just always thinking about cash flow and things like that. But then the non-entrepreneur types blaze their trail, and then it almost seems like the money falls into place and people are like, I just want to like do this and make a bunch of money accidentally. But the problem is you have to make drive the content and your actual product, whatever you make that so good that then other stuff kind of happens. And that's one thing that, so right now you're covering bills, which I would cut is as long as it's like I would say most of your expenses, not even all of them, I would call that like a full-time gig. So that's what
Yeah,
you do for a living.
yeah, this is
and
it.
and so first off, like when you're talking
'Cause
to, oops, just
Well,
drop some stuff
we
here.
no, you're cool. We
Yeah.
mentioned like like we do this all by ourselves, me
Hmm.
and you. Other people
Yeah.
have teams of people that help them out, um, but like there it takes a lot to do this, and if you want to segue into that part now, we can because
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's really funny where people just want to assume that all you got to do is like turn a camera on and turn a mic on and just press record
Yeah.
and
Well,
voila, magic. It's all of a sudden on YouTube and everybody's watching
yeah.
it
So
or
before we go into
library.
the nitty gritty of that stuff, a quick little side note on, where you're throwing some figures out there, and when like people assume if you've been in crypto forever, you're a baller, and also they assume that if you do this, it's because you want those mad gains. And so when I was like working for Cointelegraph and stuff, when I decided I'm not going to take any more fiat, I'm going to only live off of crypto. And from that point on, like that year that I did that before I started, like all of 2016, I think I made like 10 or 12 grand total. And it's just like living off of nothing because I'm just like, it's so exciting. I just wanted to like, do whatever I could to make this thing work. And it's not like you end up being a baller from this kind of stuff. And so when people say, oh, you're just a shill, you're a paid, whatever, it's like, I wish I had all this money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the cool thing though. Well, I mean, when the time, especially the bull run happens and there's more money coming into the space where companies have more marketing budgets and stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
know that there'll be opportunities to make money, and there are legitimate companies that will
Mm-hmm.
pay content creators to be able to advertise their product or what they're doing. And that being said, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a capitalist and
Yeah.
anarcho-capitalist specifically. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making money as long as you're doing things the right way. And if you're in this, like, because I believe me and you are kind of in the same
Mm-hmm.
mindset of I'm in this for the change, not the change, like the cha-ching
Mm-hmm.
change. Like that's just kind of like the icing on the cake for me.
Of
Like I've already
course.
got my cake, and the cake tastes good. I can eat the cake. The icing makes it taste better,
Of
but I can
course.
still eat the cake.
Yeah. And so that's one of those things where, people think that I have a feeling that there, as I said before, there's two camps of opinions on what we do, or more specifically, what you do for a living. Or one is, you just do something else, and you're like an investment banker or something, and then like in the side, and then or construction work or anywhere in that spectrum, and then in the side, you just like you got no life, so you go down to your little dungeon and record your little crappy videos and throw them on YouTube, and like that's just it. There's that, or there's people that just see the setup and they're like, well, look at this guy. He's got like all these views. He's got all this stuff going on. He clearly like is just he wouldn't be doing this with all this professional looking setup and stuff if he wasn't making bank. And so this guy he must be getting all those sweet crypto gains. He sees like the logos. It's that shirt. It looks like a Monarch wallet shirt from here, but just
Yeah,
like the three little thing, it's like
yeah,
that
totally
is
monarch.
like a grand right now for being on an interview saying that. That's what people are thinking. This
Yeah,
just the shirt is the grand.
Beatles yummy. I want to send you that invoice.
Yeah, and then the microphone's probably sponsoring you too, and like You probably are like,
I wish Blue Yeti would sponsor me.
yeah, it's probably a
That'd be
haircut too,
awesome.
sponsored. That's what people are probably starting to think, right? So one of the two things. So
Yeah.
like, what's it really like? So first off, what do you actually do in like a day? Not necessarily just one day, but like over the course of a week. People see you sitting there saying, I'm blah, 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 talking at the camera. They see and hear that. What don't they see and hear?
Well, I'm pretty much doing this for the most part, like 7 days a week. I'm trying to get to the point where it's at least six and
Hmm.
possibly five. I'm trying to get my weekends to be free and where I can do things at my leisure. And I pretty
Hmm.
much work at my own pace. But if you
Yeah.
look at my channel, I put out a crap ton of of content as well. So typical day for me, and I'm not shy about sharing this. I'm a big cannabis smoker.
Hmm.
So I wake up, smoke me some cannabis, drink me some coffee, get me some caffeine in my system, and do my spiritual stuff, and then I get my day going as far as content. It could range from anything from responding to a plethora of emails, to DMs and like Twitter and Facebook and all your social media stuff, to booking the actual interviews that you're trying to do and then getting a
Hmm.
schedule done. Not only that, then, doing the actual interviews or doing the conversations or doing the videos and then editing the videos and then creating thumbnails and then uploading the videos and then promoting the videos. So
Yeah.
and then I, when I'm done doing an interview, generally I will message the person and be like, I really appreciate you taking the time to, I value your time. Thank you for coming on my
Hmm.
show. I appreciate it. I'll follow up and let you know when this is going to be released. Um, and then like in between that, I'm just talking to like friends in the space,
Hmm.
mentors. I mean, it's never ending. But the thing that I've done is because I'm 45 years old,
Hmm.
is even though I stay busy and I'm very motivated, and I'm going from the time that I wake up to the time that I go to bed, I still work at my own pace,
Yeah.
and I'm smoking all day, and
Hmm.
it just helps me to be able to deal with what I'm doing, and to be able to focus. I've got a lot of ADD problems,
Of course.
and cannabis has helped me to focus a lot, and
Yeah.
it motivates me, and it keeps me in a creative element as well. And this is not something I'm saying to encourage other
Hmm.
people, but obviously in a lot of the United States, we see a lot of states that are legalized for not only
Yeah.
medicinal purposes but recreational. So obviously, if doctors are prescribing it, there is a benefit to using something like this.
Yeah, and most people I think do something like some kind of self-medication. I'm just a caffeine guy. I try to limit my intake, but once in a while, there's this coffee shop around the corner that has this thing called the Screaming Demon, which is 4 shots of espresso over concentrated cold brew. Once in a
Oh
while,
wow.
I'll just do that, and then all of a sudden, I just hulk out, and then I write like 8 articles in a row, and then I'm like, the rest of the week, then they start like putting them together and putting them out and stuff. But like, yeah, so people, I'm a slow moving mental person. I need a little bit of kick. So I
Yeah, me
completely
too.
get that.
It usually takes me from the time that I wake up at least a couple hours before I get to the point that I'm going to focus on doing
Hmm.
anything work related, because I've been trying to get in that habit of making a morning routine of
Hmm.
doing things that help me with my spirituality and set my tone for the day. So I think those
Yeah.
things are very important, and I've been trying to do that as well throughout the evening. So I mean, I'll take breaks, um and on days where I can, I'll go hang out with a friend. And I've got a girlfriend that we've
Hmm.
been together for 4 years and lived together. So I mean, I try to balance having a life as well.
Yeah. Which can
But
be
I mean,
some.
I've done well with it. I would love to be able to get some help. And that's the thing. So we talk about making money.
Hmm.
So if I do bring in a little bit more money, what's
Hmm.
going to end up happening is I'm going to spend that money to pay other people to help me to do my content so I can focus on different elements of it, because I'm all over
Yeah.
the place right now. It's like, and adding on, like, everything I mentioned was just the video stuff. Now
Hmm.
I'm stacking on this whole podcast thing. So it's like I'm adding to
Yeah.
my workload as I get comfortable.
Well, that's funny because a lot of people don't really see what goes behind the scenes of this kind of thing. Like if you've been part of a traditional media company or something like that, there's just like for example, even something like Cointelegraph, which is now a lot bigger, but wasn't, it was like a dozen, it was like six or so full-time people maybe back in the day when I started, and then like 20 plus just whenever freelance writers paid dirt, right? Which, no regrets, right? Because it let me do what I could. But even then there was a couple different editors, and would go through, and there was a guy who did the images and did all that stuff. And now I do articles, and you know when I do start to finish everything on that. And then more recently, when I was working for Dash, I was doing Dash News primarily, and myself and a partner would be would do most. So I'd do the articles, and he would do the images and the sharing usually, and then we would kind of bounce back ideas on what to write about. And then when we do the interview guest stuff, he kind of do the technical stuff. I do a lot of talking. And then we had some other contract writers that I sort of manage and stuff like that. And then now that I'm just doing on my own, like now everything is me. And some of the stuff is like, I think that we don't realize just how much stuff we can put out, how much work we can do, how many jobs. I wish I got paid by the hour for all the different jobs that I do just for myself, because
Right.
I think a lot of people don't realize all the skills that you have to do. And so for example, um, production,
Had to learn about video
light,
editing. I knew
light,
nothing about this.
camera, like a microphone quality, like what do you do, how do you get close, all that kind of stuff. That stuff's huge. Then you actually have to be an expert on the subject you want to talk about, to a certain extent. And I mean, obviously to a certain extent, it's you become just intellectually curious, and that's your expertise. But a lot of times for people to listen to you or be able to intelligently talk for long, you need to know what to do. You need to know how to talk. You need to know what gestures and facial expressions. I looked so awkward the first few times on camera, especially, and how to collect your thoughts, how to process them, how to do everything that works. That skill set, how to identify talent and interview them or be interviewed by them, how to write catchy headlines, of course, how to do Photoshop. I mean, I use GIMP, right? The free Linux, whatever version, and how to do all that from scratch. How to just, there's so many skill sets that go into this whole thing that now it's like, I think you can't really take that away, where I'm sure there's some people who just show up and talk, and it would be so easy if I could just show up,
Well,
like,
there are
yeah.
people that do that, and they do get views, and it's it depends on what you want to do, and like you have
Hmm.
to how you view yourself. I want to take the time to put a little bit of work and effort into the things that I put out. I don't want it to look half-assed because I just decided to go live and say a bunch of things and talk about I have secret intel and I've got
Hmm.
all this information, but I can't tell you who, but I can share all the information with you. And all this, stuff. It's just, I mean, I've seen it, and sometimes
Hmm.
I get angry. It like it sucks because I'm putting all this work into what I'm doing, and then
Yeah.
this guy's just pressing record, and he's not even making a thumbnail. He just takes one of the things that YouTube just automatically, would give you three different pictures from your and let you
Yeah.
choose. So it's like, and then you see some people who just put all this work into it, but ultimately those people may not have the long-term goals that someone like me and you have. Like
Hmm.
like when this system crumbles and we're already looking at the mainstream news as being the fake news, it's becoming it's not legitimate. Like me and you, people like World Alternative Media, people like We
Hmm.
Are Change, people, we are becoming the news.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to set myself up for the future in that aspect if I choose to go down that path, to be a independent researcher and journalist.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing that journalism is a very interesting subject in particular, because it's one of those things that I have a feel like you need to be able to let amateurs in, because it's a field that the best reporting is firsthand reporting, right? The best stuff is stuff that you've witnessed and you can document yourself. Citizen journalism, and it is the backbone of any free society. At the same time, there's a lot of like so-called journalists out there, either actual professional paid professionals or just amateur YouTuber type people who have no idea what they're doing, because it's a very delicate science to do correctly. If you were to
If you want
say
to get
that.
into the psychology aspect of what
Yes, and
how
like
to present news.
my mother was a journalist, and she owned her own newspaper, the first Spanish speaking newspaper in the Bay Area. And so I got like in the veins, and like I've seen, and I like worked for, I guess Cointelegraph is a legit journalistic publication, but like I've done a
Yeah.
few things like that, and it's um it's frustrating sometimes to see, amateurs mess up in the handling of facts or whatever like that, but it's still so worthwhile to have them out there. And right now we have this disparity I've seen, where the professionals know the craft really well, but the content is just garbage. And then where the amateurs are on the real stuff but have no idea how to deal with the raw information they're getting. They don't know how to like make sense of it, and then a lot of them get lumped into conspiracy theory type stuff because they end up kind of buying into that and being a little bit gullible. So we have the both categories are kind of like missing what should be. And then at some point you're going to have those people just collapse, the professionals collapse, and the ones who had integrity are going to migrate to free speech platforms and things where they can actually communicate. And then they're going to start setting a journalistic standard, like a, let's just say like a Tim Pool type thing, or like a Ben Swan type thing, where you got some people who know what they're doing, know how to raise the bar to not just like spouting like whatever your feelings are about what you see in the news, that the actual reporters
Like
report
being
on. But
unbiased,
yeah.
like actually being unbiased, taking out your emotions, looking at things from multiple perspectives. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, ultimately too, like the thing that a lot of people don't talk about with journalism
Hmm.
is you go into a situation, unless you're just like you're being hired or you're just covering something that you
Hmm.
have no skin in the game. But ultimately, when you go into a situation unbiased and you're looking for truth, when you find that truth, you're no longer unbiased. You have to be biased because you have
Yeah.
found your answers. So I mean, that's the other really cool part about being a journalist, is discovering that truth and being able to share
Yes.
that truth. And
Discovering your bias, and that it's okay as long as you acknowledge it. And it's, for example, and that's one thing I don't think people understand. People think that, fair and balanced is like, okay, well, the reality is journalism is not exhaustive documentation. It is putting together a concise story. There is a reason they're called stories, news stories, because you're telling a narrative. You're leading the audience member along. You're
mhm,
not just saying this is everything that happened. You're trying to get them to understand a situation. So you have to frame it in ways that they'll understand, and then you have to front load, of course, the key parts of the story, and then kind of bleed it down from there. And you have to actually, um, by inclusion and exclusion, you are shaping the narrative. As in, whatever, you can't say everything that happened because it just would be too much. You have to exclude stuff. And so by what you choose to say and not say, whether, even if everything's 100% accurate, by those choices of omission or whatever, you're shaping the narrative, and it just is. And so there is no such thing as completely like balanced, dispassionate journalism. You can you can get to a great bit. What you want to do is you want to be open and honest about your perspective and the audience that you're catering to, so people know what they're going to. Like if there's a crypto site and I write about a crypto news thing, and then I say that, like, well, the gold standard, blah blah blah, and the dollar going up and down, and the market's this. Talking to crypto people here. I'm trying to, like, if you want to hear about crypto, I'm telling you about current events through the perspective of someone who's interested in that. They're like, well, but you didn't see that the peso's doing well too. It's like, well, who cares of my audience? Like, it's not, go read another paper. And not only do you just go in with that, but when someone who's angry, a hater, who's angry at what you wrote because they don't like what comes out. If they can't find anything wrong with it, that's how you know you're fair. You should be fair, accurate and fair, even if you're not. You cannot
Well,
be
what would be
unbiased.
an interesting concept now when we talk about, being hired to do something and cover a
Hmm.
story? Like, if I had to go to, let's say, dog pageants,
Hmm.
I don't necessarily care about it. I
Yeah.
think I can come at that 100% unbiased. There would be no emotion coming into play. So maybe we should start like covering, having people cover the stuff that they have no interest in, just so that we
Yeah.
can get an unbiased view on that subject, as opposed to interjecting your own biasness unconsciously. Because even if you're mindful of it, the mind is
Hmm.
a terrible thing to taste, and it can trick you in a lot of different ways. And so,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I think in the old days, journalists used to be experts in the fields they covered. Whereas where we kind of ended up is then there's people who didn't know anything about what they were covering and they just kind of like, "This is what it looks like to me," and they didn't miss a lot of context. And so, for example, w- so relatively recently, like last few weeks, I started doing news articles and putting them on the same Digital Cash Network channel, primarily library channel, but other things as well, in addition to the videos I do. And just like
I noticed that.
just basically like old school Cointelegraph type articles, that kind of stuff. And the choice of like what I cover is of and how I cover it is based on what someone who actually wants to use crypto as digital cash, what is relevant information to them. And that comes from like an expertise that you can't just say, well, everyone's talking about this. This is big. It's like, oh, what did Tron acquire now? It's like, what? There's only so much of that stuff you can do. But at some point, for example, like I covered that Litecoin's going through a pump of not just price, but also the transaction count has been going up at the same time as on both the Litecoin main repository and on the Mimblewimble repository. They're both not active. Like they haven't had commits in a long time. Like development is
Yeah,
pretty
well,
much dead.
I talked to David Burkett, who's doing all the development for the Mimblewimble stuff. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's
unfortunately,
posting
it's
stuff a
just
lot.
one guy, and that's
Yeah.
it. He was paid fairly handsomely to do what he's doing. He told me, because I've been wanting to interview him. I think it's going to be probably late September,
Yeah, when they have a
October
release.
for the test net. And once the test net's done, and I think if he hasn't already, his wife is supposed to be giving birth to a child as well. Because I had
Yes.
Charlie Lee on my show a few months ago. We talked about the Mimblewimble thing.
Yeah. So you have something like that and you look at the hash rate of Litecoin as well, and the hash rate and transactions go with the price up and down. Whereas if you have like Bitcoin, for example, and Dash are ones that the hash rate goes up kind of regardless of price, especially with Dash because Dash price has been sucking until like relatively recently. And then also like the Dash transaction counts tend to go up slowly. But when there's a
Litecoin
big,
has been crapping out recently too.
yeah. So it's like when you start to, when people just try to say, oh, this is up, and then they look at metrics, oh, these are up, and they don't understand the context of some of these things have more development than others, and but their transactions go up on this thing, or some things like, for example, Litecoin, Bitcoin, Ethereum tend to go up when the price goes up. Like that's the market driven transactions. But like the regular usage in like the bottom of the bear market where everything's going down, like some things seem to be pretty steady. And it's like then you can start to understand and not just like, oh, I read a headline. You understand what's going on. And it's like Ethereum Classic, like, oh, 51% attack. All right. It's someone stole money, but do you understand why it happened? You understand that it's not a secure network because the way proof of work works, it's easy to rent enough hash rate on a lower algorithm coin and just like steal money from it. And that means then you start to think, well, Bitcoin, it's really hard to do that with. But what about Bitcoin Cash? What about Bitcoin SV? Can't a single Bitcoin miner just steal
I mean,
money
you
from
could,
those?
but it would, I
Yeah.
mean, it would still be expensive for something like Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin
Yeah.
SV. It
It would
wouldn't be
be
exactly cheap. And could you pull out more than you're putting in to get that?
mm-hmm. And then you
So
get
the
into
lower cap
economics,
coins,
right?
right? But the lower cap coins, like some of these
Hmm.
other ones, that makes sense. And we need to weed out some of those crappy coins
Yeah.
anyway. So